For 17 years, I believed that laughing at my wife's jokes about me was just part of being a good husband. But at the company dinner, she went too far, and the moment I stood up and walked away, her laughter vanished. What I found out later from her late-night messages changed everything. My name is Dale Crawford. I'm 47, and for the past 15 years, I've worked in industrial equipment sales, covering 3 different states. It's not glamorous, but it's steady work that's always kept a roof over our heads, or at least it used to. The night my world shifted began like any other corporate function. Brianna, my wife of 18 years, had insisted we go to the quarterly sales dinner. She always enjoyed those evenings more than I did, said they were good for my career, a chance to network and connect. What she really meant was that it gave her a new audience. The banquet hall buzzed with chatter and the soft clinking of wine glasses. I'd just finished explaining the new hydraulic press contracts to Johnson from accounting when Brianna's voice sliced through the noise like a sharp blade. "Oh, you'll love this one," she called out to our table of 8, her eyes shining with that mischievous spark I'd learned to dread. Last week, Dale tried to impress a client by demonstrating one of his machines. Only problem? He forgot to check if it was plugged in. Laughter rippled around the table. Johnson nearly spat out his wine. The district manager's wife covered her mouth to stifle a giggle. Even my boss, Peterson, was shaking his head, grinning. Brianna kept going, gaining momentum like a comic in her prime. The client just stood there watching him press buttons for 5 minutes. She continued. Finally, this 20-something intern pointed to the outlet. Dale's face turned redder than a stop sign. The laughter grew louder. My face burned with embarrassment, but beneath that heat, something else stirred. Something that had been simmering for months, maybe years. And the best part, Brianna added, milking the moment, is that Dale calls himself an equipment specialist. 17 years in the business, and he forgets to plug things in. That one landed differently. Not because it was crueler, but because of how casually she said it, like I wasn't even there. Like I was just a punchline, not her husband, not the father of her child. I looked around the table. Everyone was still chuckling, waiting for my usual response. The easy laugh, the self-mockery I'd always used to keep things light. That's what I'd always done. But not this time. I set down my fork. It made a faint clink against the plate. The laughter was fading, but the sound of my chair scraping back seemed deafening. Brianna's laughter stopped instantly. 8 pairs of eyes followed as I stood, straightened my jacket, and pulled out my phone. No angry speech, no scene. I just looked at Brianna, saw the confusion in her eyes, and walked out. "Dale," she called after me, her voice unsure for the first time that evening. "Where are you going?" I didn't answer, didn't turn back. I just kept walking, past the tables, the waiters balancing trays of dessert, the bar where Peterson would probably buy everyone around to fill the silence I'd left behind. The cool night air hit my face as I stepped outside. For the first time in hours, I could breathe. I sat in my truck for 20 minutes, engine off, watching other couples head inside. Couples who looked happy, couples who didn't turn each other into punchlines. The irony wasn't lost on me, sitting alone in a parking lot at 47, hiding like a teenager dodging his problems. My phone buzzed. 3 messages from Brianna. "Where did you go? Everyone's asking about you. This is embarrassing." I almost laughed. She was embarrassed. After 17 years of marriage, after making me the joke in every room, she was the one feeling humiliated. I started the truck and drove home. The house was dark except for the porch light that had been flickering for weeks. I'd offered to fix it twice. She said it wasn't worth the trouble. Nothing I did ever seemed worth her attention. Inside, I poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon and sat at the kitchen table, staring at the family photos in the hallway. There we were at Lucas's graduation last spring, Brianna glowing, me standing off to the side, like a guest in my own life. That's when it hit me. The jokes, the dismissive tone, the way she spoke over me, none of it was new. It had been happening for years, so slowly I'd stopped noticing. Or maybe I just didn't want to see it. I remembered Lucas's 16th birthday, Brianna telling everyone how I tried to assemble his gaming chair and ended up with extra screws. Big laughs all around. I joined in too, keeping the peace. Or the company picnic, when she told my coworkers the story of my food poisoning in Mexico. Every humiliating moment had been delivered with perfect comedic rhythm while I stood there, face burning, waiting for it all to end. The bourbon burned my throat. but it was nothing compared to the sting of realization that I'd been helping her tear me down. Every time I laughed along, I'd given her permission. Every time I stayed silent, I told her it was okay. My phone buzzed again, Brianna calling this time. I let it go to voicemail. Then, for the first time in years, I opened my laptop. Not to answer emails or finish reports, but to write. I started listing every incident I could remember. Every joke at my expense, every public jab, every time she made me feel small. The list kept growing. By the time I heard her car pulling into the driveway, I had 3 full pages and a painfully clear picture of what my marriage had become. She wasn't my partner. She was my heckler, and I'd been her willing straight man for far too long. The front door slammed. Her heels clicked sharply across the hardwood. Dale, what the hell was that about? I closed the laptop and looked up, really looked at her. She stood in the doorway, purse in one hand, keys in the other, waiting for the explanation she believed she was owed. For the first time in years, I didn't rush to give her one. I asked you a question, Brianna said, irritation creeping into her tone. What was that little performance tonight? I stared at her, still in her cocktail dress, still playing the part of the wronged wife. 3 months ago, I might have apologized. 6 months ago, I definitely would have. Performance? I echoed. That's an interesting word, coming from you. She shifted uncomfortably. Don't be dramatic, Dale. You walked out of a business dinner like a child. I walked out, I said evenly, because I'm tired of being your warm-up act. How long have you been using me as material, Brianna? Because I just made a list, and it goes back years. Her face flushed. That's ridiculous. I was just telling a funny story. About my work failures, I cut in. To my colleagues. People I face every Monday morning. I stood, and she instinctively took a step back. Tell me, I said quietly, what exactly was funny about me fumbling with that machine demonstration? It wasn't. I didn't mean it like that. Then how did you mean it? For the first time in as long as I could remember, Brianna didn't have a quick reply. She opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. I was just making conversation. No, I said, turning toward the kitchen window. You were making yourself look clever at my expense. There's a difference. She followed me, heels clicking against the tile. Since when do you analyze everything I say? We used to laugh about these things. We used to laugh about a lot of things, I replied, still looking out the window. Before you decided I was more entertaining as a punchline than as a partner. Silence stretched between us. Outside, I could see the neighbor's house glowing warm and yellow. A normal family, probably having a normal evening that didn't involve dissecting each other for sport. Dale, you're overreacting, she said finally, though her voice lacked its usual edge. Am I? I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app because I've been thinking about other ways you've undercut me. Remember that tech stock I wanted to invest in last year? The one you called my midlife crisis gamble? Her expression shifted instantly. She knew what was coming. That stock's up 40%, Brianna. 40. But you convinced me not to buy in, said I didn't understand the market. Guess I understood it better than you thought. I turned the screen toward her. She stared at it, speechless. So here's what's going to happen, I said. From now on, I'll be making my own financial decisions. And I'm done being your comic relief at every social gathering. Think you can handle that? She hesitated before answering, her voice smaller now. I never meant to hurt you. But you did, I said quietly. The question is, do you care enough to stop? The next morning, I woke up on the couch. Not because we'd fought. There were no slammed doors, no shouting. I'd just chosen to sleep there. It felt like a quiet statement, even if I wasn't sure what it meant yet. Brianna was already in the kitchen, making coffee, a little louder than necessary. The passive-aggressive morning routine. Good morning, I said, stretching the kink out of my neck. She didn't respond right away, just poured her coffee with exaggerated care, adding cream with meticulous precision. Lucas called last night. She finally said after our son had gone to bed. He wanted to check if everything was okay. Our son, away at college, still looking out for his parents. The kid had always been sharp. What did you tell him? I asked. That his father is going through something, she replied, turning to face me, coffee mug held like armor. Is that what this is, Dale? Some kind of midlife crisis? I almost laughed. That casual dismissal again. Any behavior she didn't understand automatically became a phase or a crisis. No, Brianna, I said firmly. This is me finally noticing what's been happening in our marriage. She slammed her mug down harder than necessary. And what exactly has been happening? You've been treating me like an employee you tolerate, someone whose mistakes make entertaining gossip at the water cooler, I said. That's not true, is it? I opened my laptop and pulled up the document I'd started last night. March 15th, company picnic. You told everyone about my food poisoning in Cancun, every detail, even me crying in the hotel bathroom. Her face drained of color. May 22nd, Lucas's graduation party. The story about me assembling his gaming chair wrong. You got 3 encores for that one. Dale, stop. July 4th, the neighborhood barbecue. You told everyone I was scared of the neighbor's chihuahua because it bit my ankle once. Those were just funny stories, she said weakly. Funny to who? I shot back. Because they weren't funny to me. I closed the laptop. They were humiliating. And you knew it. She stood there, coffee cooling in her hands. So, what do you want from me? She asked at last. I want you to choose, I said. Do you want to be married to me? Or do you want to keep using me as your personal comedy show? You can't have both. The kitchen fell silent, save for the hum of the fridge and the distant morning traffic. I need time to think, she said. Take all the time you need, I replied. I'll be here when you decide. But even as I said it, I wondered if that was still true. 3 days later, I was reviewing quarterly sales reports when my phone rang. The number looked familiar, but I couldn't place it until I heard her voice. Dale, this is Rachel Stone. I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time. Rachel, my college girlfriend, the woman I dated for 2 years before graduation. I hadn't heard from her in over a decade. Rachel, I said, leaning back in my chair. This is unexpected. How are you? I'm good, she said, a hint of hesitancy in her voice. Actually, I just moved back into town for work. Regional Marketing Director for Henderson Industries. Henderson Industries, one of my biggest clients. Small world. That's great, I said. Congratulations on the new role. Thanks. Listen, I know this is sudden, but would you like to grab coffee sometime? Catch up? I paused, wondering why she'd reached out after so many years. We'd parted on good terms, but 23 years is a long time. I'd like that, I found myself saying. There's a place called Morrison's downtown tomorrow at 2. Perfect. See you then. After hanging up, I sat staring at my phone. What were the odds? Rachel calling just as my marriage was falling apart. Part of me felt guilty, but a bigger part was curious. What would it be like to talk to someone who remembered the man I used to be? That evening, I mentioned the coffee plan to Brianna over dinner. Her reaction was instant and predictable. You're meeting your ex for coffee, she said, fork hovering midair. Don't you think that's inappropriate? It's just coffee, Brianna, I replied calmly. Given everything going on between us, the timing feels suspicious, she added, setting down her fork. I looked across the table at this woman I'd been married to for 18 years and realized I felt nothing. No guilt, no defensiveness, no urge to justify myself, only emptiness. You're right, I said. The timing is interesting, but so was your timing last night. She frowned. What do you mean? I mean, I saw you texting someone at 11 p.m. Someone named Kevin. Must be some pretty important business to talk about that late. Her face turned pale. That was work-related. Was it? I countered, because I checked. Brianna, Kevin, lots of calls and texts, often at very interesting hours. She opened her mouth, then closed it. For the first time since all this started, she looked truly unsettled. Dale, it's not what you think. I don't know what to think anymore, I said, standing up. But I am having coffee with Rachel tomorrow at 2. You can think whatever you want about that. I left her sitting there, staring at her half-eaten dinner, probably trying to calculate how much I really knew about Kevin. The truth was, I didn't know everything yet, but I was learning that sometimes the threat of knowing is just as powerful as knowing itself. For the first time in weeks, I slept well that night. Morrison's was surprisingly busy for a Tuesday afternoon. Business people having quick meetings, college students lingering over lattes and textbooks. I spotted Rachel immediately. She was sitting by the window, looking almost exactly as I remembered, just with shorter hair and laugh lines around her eyes. Dale, she said, standing to give me a quick hug. You look good. Success suits you. I wasn't sure success described where I was in life, but I appreciated the sentiment. We ordered coffee and found a quiet corner table. For a few minutes, we talked about the usual things, her job, the move, how much the town had changed. Eventually, She got to the real reason for calling. I heard about your parents, she said gently. I'm sorry for your loss. Your father was always kind to me. My father had passed away 8 months ago, sudden, devastating heart attack. I'd barely processed the grief before Brianna started using it as fodder for her stories about my emotional breakdown. Thank you, I said. He would have remembered you fondly. How are you holding up, she asked. The question caught me off guard. Not because it was unexpected, but because no one had asked me that in months. Not Brianna, not my coworkers, not even Lucas. Everyone assumed I was fine because I kept going to work, paying the bills, showing up. Some days are harder than others, I admitted. He and I still had things to work through when he died. Things we never resolved. Rachel nodded. That's the hardest part. The unfinished conversations. I took a sip of coffee, surprised at how easy it was to talk to her. Can I ask something? I said. Why did you call me after all these years? She paused, stirring her latte thoughtfully. Honestly, I've been divorced for 3 years. Messy split. I've been thinking a lot about relationships that actually mattered. Ones where I could be myself. She looked up. You were one of those people, Dale. You saw the real me, not the version I thought you wanted. I remember feeling the same way about you. Do you still feel that way? Like people see the real you? I asked. The question hung in the air. Simple, but it hit the core of everything I'd been struggling with. No, I admitted finally. I don't think I have in a very long time. What happened? I thought carefully. Brianna's jokes, Kevin's late-night texts, the way I'd slowly faded into the background of my own life. I think I forgot who I was, I said. Started letting others define me. Rachel reached across the table, briefly touching my hand. The Dale I remember was confident, funny, ambitious. He had opinions and wasn't afraid to share them. He made me feel interesting just by being interested in what I had to say. That guy feels like a stranger now, I admitted. Maybe, she said. Or maybe he just needs someone to remind him he's still in there. When I left the coffee shop an hour later, I felt something I hadn't in years. Hope. Not necessarily for a relationship with Rachel, but for the possibility that the man I used to be wasn't entirely lost. Maybe it was time to go find him. On Thursday, I hired a private investigator. Stevens was a former cop and got straight to the point. Most people already know what I'm going to find, he told me in his office. They just need proof. I gave him Kevin's information. He promised results within a week. That afternoon, I called Rachel. I was hoping you'd call, she said. How do you feel after our coffee? Like I remembered something I'd forgotten. Want to have dinner? Nothing romantic. I added quickly. I just need to talk to someone who remembers the old me. Dale, are you separated from your wife? Not officially, but we're not in a good place. She paused. I'd like dinner with you, but you need to understand. I'm not looking to be anyone's escape from a bad marriage. I've been there. I'm not looking for an escape. I'm looking for perspective, okay? But let's be clear about boundaries. I'm happy to be your friend, someone to talk to. Until you sort out your marriage, that's all this can be. I respected her honesty. We set a plan for Saturday night. When I got home, Brianna was waiting with wine and a forced smile. How was work? She asked too brightly. Fine. How about yours? Same old corporate nonsense. Kevin says hi, by the way. The casual way she mentioned him was clearly a test. I kept my expression neutral. That's nice of him, I said. She looked disappointed by my lack of reaction. Dale, I think we need to talk about what's happening between us. I agree, but not tonight. I'm tired. When then? I looked at her, the woman I'd shared 18 years with, and felt only sadness. Not anger, not betrayal, just a deep, weary sadness for what we'd lost. Soon, when I'm ready. That night, I lay in bed while Brianna pretended to sleep beside me. I could tell she was awake, probably waiting for me to bring up Kevin or start an argument that would finally clear the air, but I wasn't ready for that fight yet. I needed to understand exactly what I was facing first. The next morning, Brianna left early without saying goodbye. She had never done that before. The silence felt strangely final. My phone buzzed, a text from Rachel. Looking forward to dinner tomorrow. Fair warning, I'm excellent at giving unsolicited advice. For the first time in days, I smiled. Rachel had chosen a small Italian place on the edge of town. Family-owned, cozy, unpretentious. Exactly the kind of spot Brianna would have dismissed as too ordinary. This is perfect, I told Rachel as we settled into a corner booth. Reminds me of Tony's from college. Remember? I did. Our junior year, we'd split pizzas and talk for hours about dreams and life theories. Back when I still had theories about life. You know what I remember about you from college? Rachel said after we'd ordered. You were always planning something, a new business idea, an adventure. You had this energy, like you couldn't wait to see what came next. That guy seems like a stranger now. What happened to him? He got trained out of me slowly over the years, I said. Every idea I suggested was shot down. Eventually, I stopped suggesting anything. By Brianna, by work, by life. I learned it was easier to go along than fight for what I wanted. Rachel leaned forward. What do you want, Dale? Right now? If you could have anything. When was the last time someone had asked me that? I want to remember what it feels like to be heard. To share an idea and have someone get excited about it, instead of finding reasons it won't work. Like the tech stock investment, she said. Exactly. I'd done the research, believed in it. But instead of supporting me, she made me feel stupid for even considering it. My phone buzzed again. Stevens, the private investigator. Need to meet tomorrow. Important information. My stomach tightened. Whatever he had found was significant. Rachel noticed my expression. Everything okay? I might find out tomorrow, I said. Dale, she said gently. Can I give you that unsolicited advice I promised? Please, whatever you discover about your marriage, make sure you're making decisions for the right reasons. Don't stay because you're afraid to leave. Don't leave out of anger. Make choices based on who you want to be, not who you've been convinced you are. I looked at the woman who had known me when I still knew myself and felt something I hadn't in years, clarity. Thank you for reminding me that version of myself still exists. He never left. He was just buried under other people's expectations. When I dropped her off, she paused before getting out. Whatever happens tomorrow, remember this. You deserve to be happy. You deserve someone who builds you up instead of tearing you down. After she went inside, I sat thinking about what it meant to deserve happiness, to be built up instead of torn down. It felt revolutionary after years of believing I was lucky anyone tolerated me at all. Tomorrow, I would finally learn the truth about Kevin and Brianna. Tonight, I slept better than I had in months. Stevens called Friday morning. We need to meet. I have information you're going to want to see. His office felt smaller this time, cramped with the weight of what I was about to learn. He slid a manila folder across the desk. Your instincts were right, he said. Kevin Hartwell, 39, divorced, works in marketing at Brianna's company. They've been having an affair for 4 months. I opened the folder. Photos of them entering a downtown hotel. Restaurant receipts. Phone records showing calls and texts at all hours. Everything documented meticulously. The hotel visits happen twice a week, usually during lunch, Stevens continued. Same place, same time. They're not being very careful. I stared at a photo of them kissing in the hotel parking lot. Brianna looked happier than I'd seen her in years. There's more, Stevens said. Financial records show she's been using your joint credit card for these meetings, hotels, dinners, even gifts. The betrayal was complete. Not just emotional, but financial. She had been funding her affair with our money while making me feel like a failure for considering a simple investment. I'm sorry, Dale. I know this isn't easy to hear, Stevens said. I closed the folder. Actually, it is. Now I know exactly where I stand. That afternoon, I called Rachel. How are you holding up? She asked. Better than expected. I have proof now. No more wondering. No more second-guessing myself. What's your next step? Lawyer first. Then I'll tell Lucas. He deserves to hear it from me before things get messy. And Brianna.